Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Thursday. Today's Thursday, right? Yeah, because yesterday was Walk on Wednesday. That's the only way I know this. And yet it's another day without Mara. What are we going to do? Things are going to fall apart. Me and Mara have this thing with each other. If for some reason, if I'm not on the show, or if she's not on the show, she'll say, how did it go yesterday? And the answer is, it was horrible. Everything was falling apart. A fight broke out amongst the Zoomers. The message board got taken over got hijacked. The internet was going out repeatedly. We can't do this without you, Mara. That's our only answer. And if I was away, like when I was away in the hospital, I would say, hey, how was the show? How was the guest? Oh, she'd be like, it was terrible. Everyone was complaining. We want Raghu. We want Raghu. That was just a constant message board mantra going on. Good morning to you, Kaustubha.
Good morning, Raghunath. Good morning to you.
All is good? You got any nugs?
Yeah, I got a nug. Do you know what today is?
Nug day.
That's what you got.
I don't know.
Today's Bahulastami.
The appearance of Radha Kund.
Why don't you just share a little bit about that? Just share a little bit about that. Don't go too wild.
Me to share about?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's the day that Krishna killed this bull.
You see, I knew you went right exactly where I was going to say don't go.
What? He killed a bull. Krishna killed a bull. It happens sometimes.
It's hard
sometimes
to
you got to
explain. It's
It wasn't an
so many
ordinary
other
bull.
things you could
it was
have
a
said.
shape-shifting mystical yogi.
Okay.
That turned into a bull.
Okay.
And Krishna killed him. But the gopis were very upset.
They were kind of faking it, though. They weren't really upset. It was all part of the play.
They're teasing him. It's all part of their teasing. Just like when a boy likes a girl in kindergarten. For example, when I was in kindergarten, a girl put her hand on my shoulder and said,
"You still remember
I love
this?
you. I remember this. You. A girl put her hand on my shoulder and said,
"I love you.
I love you." And
who? What was her name?
You want to know her name? I know her name.
Yeah.
Sue Ann Thiener.
Sue Ann Thiener. We had to search her out. Someone on Facebook search her out right now. Let's find out what she's doing.
Please don't.
She touched you. She said, "I love you, Raghunath." And
she said, "I love you." And then my response was, I kicked her and said, "Shut up."
Oh, Raghunath.
I loved her. I loved her too. But that's how I responded.
What is that?
What is it in people? It's a teasing play. I just didn't know the balance. I should have just said, whatever. I don't know. Something.
Love you too, babe.
I wasn't clever enough. I kicked
that.
her and said, "Shut up." But that to me was sort of like a step forward.
You remembered it though. You remembered it.
I remember it like it was yesterday.
But
anyway, my point being that yes, you're right.
Young boys and young
Krishna
girls
and Radha are teasing.
And there's a joy, there's a pleasure in that teasing, right? So this is what happened, right? As you said,
Are you hijacking the Leela?
Well, no. Well, I'm just trying to frame it. I want you to take it. I'm going to hand the ball back to you, but I want to frame it.
Okay. All right.
So, as you mentioned, a shape. This is there in Bhagavatam. It's all discussed, right? 10th canto, and in order to intensify the loving exchanges between Radha and Krishna, that's the highest. There are many purposes carried out in these pastimes, in these leelas, right? But let's say that's the deepest and most essential purpose, right? That this shapeshifter, demonic being, shifted his shape into the shape of a huge bull,
massive
one, and appeared
Not
there.
Just like bulls are big compared to cows, anyway.
Yeah,
but this thing was huge. Yeah, and they're scary.
And so and it showed up in Vrindavan, and it was there looking very threatening to the gopis. Now, what this did was it gave Krishna the opportunity to step up, right?
To play the hero.
And
that's another thing in play, is somebody becomes the hero. I would always fantasize about me being a hero when I was like in elementary school.
But the difference between you and Krishna was Krishna protected the girls. You kicked the girl.
Well, in my turbo scenarios in elementary school, like something like there would be a collapse of the school and I would run and I would pick up the girl in my arms and run out and protect. I'd actually think of heroic things that I would do. Of course, I didn't do them in reality, but that was my turbo scenarios I would create in my brain.
See, that fantasy is the dream within the dream, right? We're living in the dream where we're trying to be the hero. We're trying to be the Krishna. We're trying to be the center in one way or another. And when it's not happening due to our karma not being good enough, then we fantasize about it. That's the dream within the dream.
Well, the magic of the crazy about the dream is I think that Sue Ann Beener will actually fulfill my God-shaped hole. And that's just not true. And I'm going to have to tell her that one day. But that's why the whole idea
she may still love you,
She may. That's what the idea of like conjugal love in this world, whether it's straight or heterosexual. And sometimes people say, well, are you guys conservative? Are you against gay marriage? The whole thing is perverse, not gay marriage. Just the man with woman is not normal. We are meant to be with God. That's our lover.
Right.
This whole world is perverse. We're falling in love with
things. In one sense. Let's not.
Come on. We're falling in love with things. We're falling in love with a car. Like, this is my car. We're falling in love with our home. We're falling in love with like pieces of metal or jewelry. Sometimes we treat a thing more than we treat a person better. Yeah. And then when you take, no people, you love people. It's still not going to fill the God-shaped hole. They're there on our journey, but the real normal is me and God. That's called yoga.
Okay, yoga.
That's what yoga is.
So in yoga, you could be one of those gopis, for instance, and experiencing a level of ecstasy that's just really inconceivable to us, but somehow we misconceive. I actually want to be Krishna in the equation. It's kind of like, well, that role is already taken. Okay, then you can enter into the dream, right? Right.
So me saving girls' lives, roof collapsing.
That's the dream within the dream. That's the dream within the dream. You stepping out on the stage in Youth of Today and singing your song, that's the dream.
But it's like for example, if you ever go to a pond, and on the pond there's trees on the bank of the pond, and you look in the pond, and then all of a sudden the wind blows, and the reflection, it looks like the tree is blowing, but it's just blowing the pond water. Okay. So we are living in a reflection, because where does that heroic, the mood of heroism come from? Actually, what we're doing is a reflection of Krishna's heroism. The whole material world is that reflection.
Okay. Now we've framed it with
shadow, perhaps.
Shadow, reflection, dream. We can use all of these terms. And then there's the dreams within the dreams, which was the fantasies that we have.
It's like when the shadow makes a shadow.
Do you ever remember that there was the Stambadas, who
I remember
favorite speakers, and he had one of his talks. He was saying, just see how long you can go without fantasizing, right? Just really watch your mind throughout the day and see like how quickly you slip into fantasy.
The whole thing is fantasy. The whole thing is like airbrushing, photoshopping the material world. You're not going to share, Bunky. I'm gonna break our confidentiality here. I'm gonna share what he said to me.
Okay.
If you don't mind. If you don't. No, he said something really. So he said something that was really beautiful in Krishna conscious, but he took it. I'm talking for you. He took it as sort of like I'm a little sad, or I'm a little empty, or I'm a little blah with the whole existence, and I've got to figure out. He was just thinking about, and I was like, that is actually Krishna consciousness when you actually strip away the
the veneer
filters, the filters we put on our photos, where we try to make the gray day like bright and sunny.
The saturation.
No, the material world is monochrome, black and white. It's flat, it's dull, it's boring. It's all a big deal. Big deal. The coolest thing you do, I went here and we climbed this, we did this, and I squirrel suited out of here. Big deal, people. Big deal. That's the material world. Not so big. It's not so important. It's all an Instagram photo that you're going to post.
All right, that's it. Okay,
so that's sort of it. That's sort of it. But I'm here to say, spiritual life is different. I'm a complete pessimist with the material world and a complete optimist with the spiritual world. There is hope in the spiritual world. There is no hope in matter.
But
because it's temporary.
When you bring that transcendental consciousness into the material world, then that lights that whole thing up too. So let's.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying cut your head off and be spiritual. I'm saying we work in this world in a spiritual way.
Yeah. And then it all.
And that's where we find our spiritual connection.
Okay.
So anyway,
all that being said,
bull.
Yeah. So now let me frame it again. So in order to provide an opportunity to intensify that rasa, that relationship where Krishna is stepping up for the gopis, he steps up, he deals with the bull, he takes it down, right?
Right.
Now, the girls, they should be all like, oh my God, you're our hero. What you just did was so great. You saved us from that terrifying experience of that bull. But they don't play it that way, do they, Raghunath?
No.
And by not playing it that way, they actually increase the flavor of the exchange.
Increase the sort of like little flirty. They're flirting. Yeah. It's flirting. It's the divine Shakti, right? Flirting with Bhagavan. It's like the most charming, attractive. Yeah.
This is the origin of flirting. The joy of flirting is being carried out in this Leela to its highest perfection.
We're flirting in the material world. It's just you're just creating more and more filters, more and more airbrushing, more and more photoshopping of what is a big deal. Big deal. That's Rajaguna. That's what flirting is in the material world.
So what do they say?
I know it's fun.
So what do
fun
they say?
Flirting. So, shall I tell the story, Bud Abbott?
Well, I'm saying, what did they say?
You're Bud Abbotting me. You know that, right?
I'm keeping it framed this way. What did they say to Krishna after he killed the bull?
Well, after he killed the bull, the gopis were like, Krishna, you better bathe, because after all, like,
this is really
you just killed a cow. This is like a grievous sin.
You need to go to the holy rivers, like, and
oh my God, you better go to the Ganga. You better go to the Ganga. And he goes, the Ganga, I'll get all the holy rivers to come.
So that was his way, right? Like they were playing with him. They were messing with him, saying, oh, you are sinful. You are bad. You know, like they should have been like, oh my God, you saved us. No, they played it the other way. They said, you know, look at you. What you did is adharmic. Killing an animal like that, especially a bull, such a holy being. You know, this is so wrong. You're sinful. We can't associate with you, right? So then he says, okay, well, then watch this. He ups it, right? He's got a response to it.
He said, well, you've just made a great offense, because that wasn't a bull. That was actually a demon. Therefore, you've offended a great soul. Now you must take bath.
Well, no, first of all, he had to set up his own bath.
Oh, well, like he called all the holy rivers to come.
And what is that place known as?
That's Shama Kund, the pond. There's so many kunds. Or ponds or sacred lakes. So this is called Shamakund.
Which you can visit to this day.
Oh, yeah. And that is where Krishna brought all the holy rivers personified, came, bowed down, offered prayers, and created his kund.
To take his
then he was teasing them back and saying, hey, by the way, that wasn't a bull, it was a demon, and you've made a great offense. Now you have to take bath. And so they dug a hole, and then they went to Manasa Ganga. Now, Manasa Ganga is just right up the road. That is the Ganga right in Vrindavan. How could that be? The Ganga doesn't flow in Vrindavan. How can that be? Well, Krishna one day noticed that all the cowherd men were leaving. And they said, well, where are we going? He goes, you know what? We're taking a family trip to the Ganga. This is what Indians do. They go to the Ganga. That's just their like version of going to Epcot, Busch Gardens, or Disney, is they go to the Ganga. And so they said, come on, Krishna, we're all going to go to the Ganga. And he said, no. I don't want you to leave Vrindavan. Let me bring the Ganga here. Again, Krishna sat in meditation. And then Ganga Devi appears. Now, Ganga Devi is Krishna's servant. And she appears very beautifully, showing up on her crocodile mount, right? We mentioned that she had a crocodile mount. She got off the mount. She bowed down. Krishna, how can I serve you? And he said, I want you to reside here. And she said, so be it. And that's where the Ganga manifests in Vrindavan at Govardhan Hill. So they had to bring all that water from Ganga to start to fill Radhakund. And then they also used the water from Shamakund. Isn't that correct?
They mixed so many waters together.
It all got mixed. There's a special sangam underneath there where they mix together.
Yeah. But the fact that Radha herself bathed there, right?
Special. They call it liquid love.
What they do today is it's her love in the form of water. It's considered the absolute most sacred of all holy places. In other words, all those sacred, like Ganga is considered to be very sacred, Yamuna is, but this is all those plus Radha bathing in it and her love. Her love, which is the most sacred thing in existence, right?
I've had
the purity of her love for Krishna.
I've had students. I mean, Carla Strangberg here too. Bob Healy. It's like they went to Radhakund, and if I asked like Bob, like, what was your thing in India? I sort of like got it. I thought it was cool. I thought it was. Then I went to Radhakund and everything changed. It has that type of a potent effect.
So this is the day of the appearance of Radhakund. In other words, it was on this day that those waters appeared there.
Yeah. And so what they do, what do they do? They do an all-day kirtan celebration, and then at midnight, everybody bathes, and it's incredible. I went in 1988. I went with 3 people: Damodar Swami, Bibi Govinda Maharaj, and Satchidananda Maharaj, and I was like super brand new, and I was thinking to myself, what an incredible festival that the entire world does not know about. There's just kirtan going on from thousands of different ashrams, people packing the sides of these sandstone steps, which almost look like one of these, basically a pyramid inverted going down, but sort of steps going down into a lake. And at midnight, everybody just bathed, and it was like beautiful. And I thought to myself, I kid you not, when I get older, I would love to take people to holy places. That was my prayer that night. And that's what I got to. Radha couldn't fulfill my desire.
Amazing.
Radhakund is one of those magic spots for prayers. I go there with lists of prayers for people, and they magically happen. I kid you not.
You just see it as a wish. You just go there to like get material things.
To get material benedictions. Yeah. Just kidding. Just kidding. To get stuff. Well, I had a friend.
Spiritual.
I had a brahmachari friend who was struggling in the ashram, and I went to India, and he ended up leaving the temple, getting into some Maya, and then I was a brahmachari, and I went to Radhakund, and my heart really went out to him, and I prayed for him, and then I went back to the ashram that night. He was there. I kid you not.
I know
he was there.
Incredible story.
He just showed up.
Tony.
Radhakund fulfills all desires.
All right, so today's that day. So it's a very special, Kartik month has a lot of special days like this. So today's Bahulastami, the appearance day of
All right, thanks for sharing that with me.
Yeah.
It was a little bit of a squirrel, but it's the Bhagavatam. It's Krishna, it's Kartik. We can take those Krishna conscious chase a squirrel into the forest. Right? All right, what do you say we dive into this sweet stuff?
All right.
I'm gonna do something first. I'm gonna call Mara. Sorry. I'm gonna call her because I want to know if we're doing Sweet Baby Krishna.
Get her on the phone.
Let's get her
And if
on
she
the
can
phone.
answer the phone, then why isn't she on the show?
Well, she's babysitting for Frankie.
Yeah, you do both at the same time.
Hey, Mara, you're live. Can everybody hear her?
Kind of.
I just want to know if we're doing.
This morning.
I just want to know if we're doing Sweet Baby Krishna tonight.
Sure. 7:30.
Yeah, you want to come over? Justin will cook.
Sure, that sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, just checking in. I really wanted to. I really wanted to hear your answering machine message because it's so funny when you talk like in 2 octaves higher than a normal human. Hi, this is Mara. How are you? but we got you instead. Okay, we're going to the Bhagavatam. I got to stop chasing these squirrels. All right, 7:30 tonight.
Great.
All right, Bo.
7:30.
Before you go into the Bhagavatam, I wanted to say that
How did Karuna get in?
Karuna's taking over her spot. She's just waiting in the wings. This is my chance.
How did Karuna get in there? Okay, Karuna.
How did she unmute herself?
How did you
You're not
unmute
allowed
yourself?
to unmute yourself, Karuna. You know that. All right, please hold. Narayanam
Hold on,
namaskrityanam
she was gonna say something.
Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayesha Vadreshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart will become extinguished, and loving service to the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, will be established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Tamurandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chaksur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My teachers are opening my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my obeisances at their lotus feet.
Okay.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3.
Hold on, what did
Chapter
Karuna have to
26.
say? You cut her off.
Karuna, what's going on? What's going on today with you?
Now she's muted.
I asked her to unmute. There
yeah,
you go.
just wanted to say that my mom dips her beads in Radha Kund and Shama Kund.
Your
Oh,
mom
yeah.
dipped her beads in Radha Kund and Shamakund.
I've done that too.
I did that too. Can I ask you a favor? Can you go to your mom's bead bags and steal them and send them to me in the mail? Can you do that for me? Is that transcendental thievery? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? They were dipped in Radha Kund.
Of course not. Raghunath.
Go into your mother's purse. Just kidding. Just kidding. There'll be a bead bag there.
There's a credit card there.
I'm a bad influence. Thank you,
Okay,
Karuna.
thank you, Karuna, for sharing that.
Yes, sometimes people do that. They take their beads and they dip them in holy rivers or holy lakes. It's special.
Yep.
Okay, we are reading from the Fundamental Principles of Material Nature. What
Correct.
text, Prabhu?
Lady Di says we're on text 28. I bet she's right.
She knows stuff. She knows things.
Mhm.
The mind of the living entity is known by the name of Lord Aniruddha,
Oh, yeah.
the supreme ruler of the senses. He possesses a bluish black form resembling a lotus flower growing in the autumn. He is found slowly by the yogis. Text 29.
Yeah, so that was just wrapping up. You know, you talk about a gobstopper sometimes, right? Raghunath?
A gobstopper. Did everybody understand this analogy? A gobstopper, or it's one of those candies that have layers of colors. As you suck it, it turns red, then it turns purple, then it turns white, then it turns orange, and in the middle there's a little goodie ball.
Yeah. So this universe is like a big gobstopper, and it has layers of material elements as it goes in, and then those elements manifest in different ways. I don't know if they stay there or if it's kind of like everything gets developed
Right.
from those layers, right? Like there's a placenta that nourishes the baby. You know, it's kind of like I don't know if those elements, right? Let's face it, Raghunath, we're confused. about
We're
this
confused.
chapter.
We're
We
gonna
don't
skip over this
understand.
section.
We
Oh,
need
just-
someone to come. Maybe we need to bring the spiritual scientist onto the show and just work us through this chapter. That's an idea. Maybe we could
That's
bring
an
him on
idea.
tomorrow, right? But
Let's
the-
reach out to the spiritual scientist.
Okay, we'll reach out to the spiritual scientists. Maybe we could get him on tomorrow. But it's describing these different layers. And yesterday we were reading about the manas, that impulsive part of the mind where desire is seated, right? And this verse was wrapping up that by saying that you connect that mind with the Lord Aniruddha. He's a form of Lord Vishnu that is like the god of that part of the mind. And it describes his form, and it says that the yogis meditate on this form. He is found slowly by the yogis. Whether that slowly is indicating that the path of Ashtanga Yoga is a much more slow path than, say, the path of Bhakti-yogi, which Kapil Dev is going to describe. That's how I would understand it. You think?
Yeah, yeah.
Right. He's
I like
understood
that.
slowly by the yogis. He's understood more quickly by the bhaktas. Right.
Yeah, that was interesting how I put that.
Okay.
Okay, moving on.
Text 29.
Text 29. By transformation of the false ego in passion, intelligence takes birth. O virtuous lady. The functions of intelligence are to help in ascertaining the nature of objects when they come into view and to help the senses. So this is, sort of what we were saying yesterday, how all of our study of sacred literature, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, even chanting of mantras, hearing lectures, hearing transcendental sounds, all those are meant to refine, cleanse our intelligence. Because just in the same way that we have a dirty body and you need to take a bath, intelligence can be, what do the Buddhists say? Defiled. I like that word. A defiled intelligence. Just like, for example, there is a person who's selling drugs. It's not like they don't have intelligence. Sometimes they're incredibly intelligent, but they're using that faculty for degrading things.
It's been defiled,
It's
corrupted.
been defiled. So it's got nothing to do with our regular material skills, but it's degraded. It's not being used for your liberation.
Yeah.
Some people ever meet it could be a girl too, but guys who sort of like some guy who's like very clever and manipulative, and they use their intelligence. Even if the guy's doing something wrong, he'll justify it because he might be smarter than his partner, but it's a material type of smartness, and they just use it to manipulate other people.
So
Yeah,
in one
it's
sense,
not-
they're very
they're-
intelligent, like that.
yeah.
It's that faculty that they have functions at a high rate. It's efficient at the
So
work
we're not
that it
interested in
does.
great intelligence. We're not interested in great. We're interested in refined, purified intelligence.
Right.
I've met devotees who were not so intelligent, but they were great souls. They weren't like, they were almost like dumb,
But in one sense, they're the most intelligent then.
Yeah. You know what? It's sort of like a Volkswagen Bug, Jalopy, but pointed in the right direction
That's right.
is so much better than a Ferrari going the wrong way.
Boo, right.
Boo, boo. That's a good one.
Okay.
I just made that up.
I think it worked
You
well.
keep
I
that.
like
You
that.
keep it if you like it.
I'll keep it.
You
Yeah.
put it in your little bag of goodies.
So we may have like a brain that functions, that is facilitating this intelligence, at a high rate, but it may be working against it. I always love this statement. I think it's really helpful. And let's just zoom out just a bit here and say, let's look at what the Bhagavatam is doing for us here. Is identifying, the terminology gets confusing, but let's say what we call the mind, our cognitive faculty, right?
Okay, there you go.
Our faculty that we have to think. And it's divided it up into different sections for us, or different functions for us. I think this is I prefer to go with the Bhagavad Gita is more simplified, and the Yoga
Right.
Sutra is more simplified, which just breaks it down into 3. That within the broader mind, which there would be identified as the chitta, there is what we spoke about, what we spoke about yesterday, the manas, which is where desire really sits, which isn't reflective in the sense that there's not deep thought going on there, but there's programmed desire there. I want this. It'll make me happy if I get it. I don't want that. That'll make me unhappy. It's programming sitting there. And again, now that programming is very random, right? There's not real truth to it, because our happiness isn't dependent, or our distress isn't dependent on any external thing. That's actually the nature of the soul underneath it all. That is the true happiness. So there's that manas. And then there's what's called the ahankara, which means our sense of identity, who I am. And then there's
the false ego,
we can call that the false ego,
as opposed to the real sense of self,
which is the soul again. And then there's what we could call the intellect or the intelligence, which is the part of the larger mind that is there for us to, well, it's saying right here, ascertaining the nature of objects, right? It contemplates, it reflects, it discerns, right? And now, so when we can zoom out and look at your own mind, examine your own mind, look at it like this, observe the different functions with the knowledge coming from Bhagavatam that these aren't me, that these are programmed. I'm watching how well they function. Now I actually have the chance of not being ruled by it, but starting to put it into place. Now, it's not easy to reprogram it. It's not easy to get it working for you. But that's what yoga is, right? Yoga is a practice which empowers one to overcome the obstacle of the mind for the purpose of the self experiencing their own true nature.
Say that again.
Yoga is a practice.
You know it. We sort of know it, but it's so eloquent. Say it slow.
Yoga is a
Let us
practice.
drink it.
Yoga is a practice which empowers one to overcome the obstacle of the mind. Now we're talking about the broader mind, the entire chitta here. For the purpose
There you go.
of the self experiencing its own true nature. I'm confused by this mind thinking this will make me happy, that won't make me happy. I got this false ego, identifying with this body, which is not me, got me all confused. I'm at loss now. I'm totally lost. And then the intelligence, this discerning faculty, is it working for me like the VW bug going in the right direction, or is it working against me like the Maserati going in the wrong direction, or Ferrari, whatever he said it was? Right?
I said Lamborghini, but you're attached to the
Lamborghini.
Maserati that we were supposed to get.
That's right. So there's a statement that I always found very helpful, and you really think about this. This is the way that yogis begin to break things down and begin to think about things. And sometimes it's said like this: rationalization. You know what I'm going to say, Raghunath?
No, I'm just let down because we had 108 people and somebody left, and now there's 107.
That's a squirrel.
But Ramit's here, so I see Ramit here, so I'm going to call her 108. Oh, 108's back. I offended them,
Raghunath,
and they
you
got
see, that
back.
was a squirrel. That was a squirrel.
I know, but it was a relevant squirrel.
It was
108 people.
entirely
That is a Krishna
irrelevant.
miracle, my friend. There can be any number of people joining our show, and the fact that there's 108, the magic Krishna number, and then all of us, right? It's like everybody's ATM password.
Now I got to go and reframe everything I said earlier, just so that I could make the point that I was building up to. Like you're working towards something, and then you go off.
It always goes to a Krishna miracle, man. God is miraculous. All right,
It'd
what do
be
you got?
miraculous if you could get through a show without running off after a squirrel. So now, what I was saying was rationalization can be seen as the intellect, the intelligence, working in service of the false ego, right? Or, for that matter, for the manas, right? In other words, I use my intellectual faculty. I use that incredibly subtle, powerful piece of equipment that I have. That's meant for me to be able to pick through the illusion of this material world, but it's become corrupted by the ego. It's become corrupted by the mind and senses, and now it's working to serve them. So I do something that's detrimental to myself and or detrimental to others, right? If it's detrimental to others, it's detrimental to myself in any case.
Right.
And rather than examine that, determine the problem with it, and then recognize it and rectify it, I rationalize it, right? Oh, really? Well, there's really nothing wrong with it. Or, well, there's a good reason for that. Or, well, I did it because they did that. Or whatever it might be, right? We rationalize. We use that intellectual capacity to rationalize our shortcomings. So again, rationalization is the intellect in service of the ahankara in the manas, in service of the false ego or the impulsive mind.
You know what's interesting, Prabhu,
Yeah.
is that in the same way we say, the body's changing, you're not the body, you were a child. Our subtle body always changes as well. Our subtle body is always in flux, and it's in flux according to what we associate with. Like if you go to a sports stadium, all of a sudden you might not even like sports, but you just get swept up. The ego, the sense of self gets swept up in the thing. I'm a fan, and they do all things that fans, do in the stadium. So the ego is malleable. It's not us. The mind is malleable. And of course, we were just saying that intelligence is also something in flux. It's something that we're observing. Like I observe myself when I get around my kids' school teachers to act a certain way, or when I get around someone else, my sense of self changes. When I get on stage in the band, my sense of self changes. When I teach a yoga class, my sense of self changes. And there's a witness.
Yeah.
Huh?
What to speak of when you move from one body to the next.
Oh yeah. Let's speak of that. Sometimes, yeah, right.
So the point you were making, you
my point making that the whole subtle self is not only us. It's so malleable, and we just witness it change.
We can witness it. We can observe it. Yeah.
And part of our yoga practice is to start witnessing. Okay, body's changing. Okay, the mind is changing. Okay, the intelligence is changing. Now, how do I want to harness all these things so I choose how my body changes?
That's called
yoga. So
yoga.
I can choose how my mind is going to change. Huh? That's a good way to think about it.
That's called yoga. Yeah, harnessing it.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Very good. Why don't we read the commentary to this verse?
Yeah. Okay, that's a good one. Where did my thing go? Oh man, the double screens. Ever get that where your thing hides?
Where your thing hides.
30? No. 29?
29.
Okay. You're gonna like this. So the intelligence is the discriminating. Discriminating means sort of like discerning, right? Discriminating power to understand an object. That's what the intelligence is. The discerning or discriminating power to understand an object, a thing. And it helps the senses make choices. Therefore, intelligence is supposed to be the master of the senses.
And of course, senses includes the mind here, right? Which is called the sixth sense,
The analogy, the old days, they said that the chariot has 5 senses, right? The nose, the tongue, right? So the 5 senses are the horses pulling the chariot. The reins of the horses are the mind, and the intelligence is the driver.
Right.
And then we're
passenger.
Then we're just the passenger, the soul's passenger.
Soul, yeah.
You know what I always say though? I use it a more modern one. I always say, like, if you're driving down a hill in San Francisco and you let go of the wheel, who's driving you? Are you driving the car or is the car driving you? You can't parallel park when you get to the bottom of that hill. In the same way, once the intelligence let goes of the reins of the horses, now it's the senses pulling the being around. You like my updated version?
It's not
2.0.
It's not as precise. It's okay. I mean, I could see you could use that, sure, but like the 5.
Well, I mean,
horses actually
come on, who can relate to a horse and buggy?
All right, continue with the commentary, please.
Okay, there's a little bit more. By proper use of intelligence, one's consciousness.
No. The perfection of intelligence.
The perfection of the intelligence is attained when one becomes fixed in the activities of Krishna consciousness. Fixed in the activities of Krishna consciousness. By the way, that can sound like, if I was brand new to this and I heard that, I was like, this is very narrow type of thinking.
Like he just took it.
It's not.
Okay, well, we're going to prove why. We're going to justify that, and it won't be in service of false ego. Okay.
What?
I'm going to explain why Srila Prabhupada just said that.
Okay, perfection. Let me say it again. Perfection of intelligence is attained when one becomes fixed in the activities of Krishna consciousness. So my argument is, Kaustubha, it's such like a narrow. There's a whole wide world out there. What do you mean fixed in the consciousness?
I want you to read
Krishna?
the next sentence too, because that'll just complete it.
By proper use of intelligence, one's consciousness is expanded. And the ultimate expansion of consciousness is the ultimate expansion of the ultimate expansion of consciousness is Krishna consciousness.
Okay. Why don't you try that sentence one more time?
By the proper use of intelligence, one's consciousness is expanded. And the ultimate expansion of consciousness is Krishna consciousness.
It's
Don't
very
you think
profound.
that's a little sectarian?
Okay. Well, this is it. What Prabhupada's doing is he's not trying to promote a particular sect. What he's trying to do is represent what's being said in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay? And if, as we continue to read these chapters, these are exact points that Kapil Dev is going to make himself as we move through. Okay? But even beyond that, let's go to, say, Bhagavad Gita, right? Let's look at this word fixed, right?
What?
Fixed. Something that's, what's the word used here? Oh, no, probably it's not translated. It's just Prabhupada's word. So he says fixed. Let's go to chapter 2. And here Arjuna asks, in text 54 of the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asks Krishna a question, very relevant question, right? He says, what are the symptoms? Huh?
254?
254. Yeah, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is merged in transcendence, right? The real yogi, right? The one who's really accomplished something. What are the symptoms? And what Sri Krishna does here is he's going to share some verses, and then he's going to define that person with a term. Do you know what term he uses?
Stita D. Muni.
Boom. Right.
I get it?
Pull that one out.
Did I get that right?
Yeah, you got it right.
Totally wasn't expecting that. Woo!
No, yeah, come on. This is where it all comes out. So the sage of steady mind, the mind being steady or fixed, right? He's just representing Krishna here. He's just representing Bhagavatam. He's representing Bhagavad Gita. He's just telling it like it is, but he's kind of framing it for us. So now when Krishna speaks here, he's going to answer these questions. And at first, he's going to speak on this broad level, like, in other words, a level that includes like the entire yoga community, right?
Right.
But then when he gets towards the end of it, he's going to say, but when you take it to its ultimate, it's focused on me. Right? He's going to talk about how the mind is of a transcendentalist is situated in a general terms. And then he's going to show how that is perfected or finds its ultimate conclusion in being fixed on him, because he's the source of all existence. So let's read these verses. They're great verses, Text 55, Krishna says, O Arjuna, when a person gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction, and when their mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then they are said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. Now, this is exactly what we're saying when I defined yoga, right? It's a practice. So here it says, when their mind's been purified, it gets purified through this practice. When it finds satisfaction in the self alone, in other words, you experience your own true nature, right? Which arise from mental concoction. When a person gives up all varieties of desires for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction. In other words, the mind's been programmed with ideas of what's going to make me happy. When you become purified of that, and you find satisfaction in the self alone, you experience your own true nature, then you're said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. Then he says, one who is not disturbed in mind, even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated when there's happiness, and who's free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a sage of steady mind. Stita Dear Muni, right there.
You're like that. You are.
Bubba, I got so far to go on this guy.
I know you're saying, because only a person that is over it would say something like that.
Okay. And then he goes on. In the material world, one who is unaffected by whatever good or evil they may obtain, whatever pleasant or unpleasant things are coming their way, neither praising it, this is so great, or despising it, I can't stand this anymore, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. One who is able to withdraw the senses from the sense objects as the tortoise draws its limbs within the shell is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. Though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyments, the taste for sense enjoyments may still remain. But ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, they are fixed in consciousness. Now, that higher taste can be defined as the experience of the true self, that spiritual experience, that bliss that one feels. But that's still highest taste, right? Is that connection to to the personal form of God. So now it'll say, the senses are so strong and impetuous, O Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind, even of a person of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them. But now he's going to reveal. And this is what Prabhupada is representing when he makes a statement like he just did in that commentary. This is Krishna saying it now, right? He says, he says, one who restrains their senses, keeping them under full control. Now, even this verse is still kind of like very general, right? He says,
Right.
and who fixes their consciousness upon me is known as a person of steady intelligence. So what Prabhupada is doing is exactly what Krishna does here, is exactly what Kapila Dev does later in the third canto, is he's just revealing where it's all meant to go. It's meant to help. It's not sectarian. He's not saying that other more general paths of yoga are invalid. He's saying they're valuable, but they're all ultimately lead to that origin of all of us. Right?
Yeah. It's Scranton, Prabhu. It's the Scranton analogy.
Don't get
Scranton's nice. Scranton's cool. Scranton has a cool movie theater, a nice downtown. But if your job is to drive to LA, don't hang out in Scranton. Just go through Scranton. Just go through Scranton.
Appreciate Scranton.
Appreciate Scranton. Like Scranton. Have lunch in Scranton.
Go ahead, have lunch there.
But there's a goal. We're going somewhere with all this.
Okay.
This is what we're doing, refining it all. And that's what the Bhagavatam does. Other Puranas even drop you off at different rungs of the ladder.
Yeah.
But the Amala Purana, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the purest, it just pushes you towards pure bhakti and the original cause of all causes, little sweet baby Krishna.
It's
That's
nothing against Scrantonians.
Yeah, it's nothing against Scrantonians.
Okay. Let's read the next verse. I think we can spend the rest of the show on this next verse.
Okay.
Tell me if this
accepting all
reminds you
takeaways,
of anything. Tell me if this verse reminds you.
Europe has their own version of Scranton. It's called Stuttgart.
I've been to Stuttgart.
You've been to Stuttgart? Okay, that's going to be our European version. Okay, next verse.
Text 30.
Text 30. Doubt, misapprehension, correct apprehension, memory, and sleep, as determined by their different functions, are said to be the distinct characteristics of intelligence.
Okay. That ring any bells?
Misapprehension, correct apprehension, memory, sleep? I don't get sleep. As determined by their different functions, are said to be the distinct characteristics.
That's practically almost like just repeated in the Yoga Sutras, right? This is how the Yoga Sutra defines the vrittis, the fluctuations of the mind. Right? The Yoga Sutras opens up. What's the first sutra in the Yoga Sutras? You know that one?
Tato Brahma Igyas. No, it's
Tato
Yoga
Anushasanam.
Shashanam.
Yeah, now's the time to practice yoga.
Now's the time to practice yoga. What the
Okay.
hell are you guys doing over here on Zoom just sitting down? Come on, get in your sweatpants and start practicing yoga. Sitting
Now's the
there
time.
lazy, sipping tea. Get out of here, Zoomers.
No, but then so that you don't have a misconception like that, then the next sutra says, yoga's chitta vritti nirodha, right? That-
Yes.
What is yoga then? Yoga is the stilling, the cessation of the fluctuations of the chitta or of the mind, right? And then the next verse says, when one experiences that, then they abide in their own true nature, which is exactly like the definition of yoga that I just said, right? You overcome the obstacle of the mind, you experience the true nature of the self. But in Ashtanga yoga, the idea is you do that through a process of trying to still the fluctuations of the movements of the mind. But then it'll define what are the movements of the mind. What do they, then it'll say if one doesn't achieve that, then they identify with the fluctuations of the mind, right? They don't experience their own true nature. They experience the fluctuations of the mind. And that's what we're all going through, right? And that can be defined here. Sometimes we're perceiving things properly. Sometimes we're not. Sometimes we're in the state of sleep. Sometimes we're in a state of doubt. And what was the other one?
Sleep, doubt, apprehension, misapprehension.
So apprehension, yes, understanding things correctly. He says there's doubt, There's misapprehension. I think that's a rope, but it's actually a snake. I think it's a snake, but it's actually a rope, right? There's correct
Right.
apprehension. I actually understand things as they are. There's memory, which means rather than focusing on what is before my senses at this moment, I'm drawing up from within the mind an impression that was left previously. There's a state of sleep, and in here, different commentators have different ideas about what this means, but there's a state of awareness where almost your awareness is shut down, right? So what the yogis are saying, what Patanjali is saying, what Kapila Deva is saying here is that when we're absorbed in material consciousness, we're in one of these different states, and the mind is constantly shifting from one to the other, from one to the other, from one to the other. So what happens in the Yoga Sutras is that Patanjali says, I can help you with this, right? If you haven't achieved liberation yet, or what he'll call kaivalya, right, freedom from all of this, well, then I can help you with that. I've got a process that's going to help you do that. And the way that you're going to overcome this and experience your own true nature is going to be very satisfying, is we're going to still the mind. We're going to stop it from moving from one to the other, to the other, to the other. And if you can actually still it, you're going to experience your own true self underneath. Sometimes I say like this, Raghu, imagine you're in a room, right? You're locked in a room. And like the walls are just kind of covered with television screens. And it's just, switching from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, and with loud sound, and it's just moving nonstop, and you really can't get out of it. So it's kind of torturous, It's,
Right.
It's kind of like dominating you with its influence. And if someone were to after like hours of that, if someone were to suddenly pull the plug on it, and there's this silence, right? It would be like, oh, like relief. Now I can actually experience myself again, right?
Kaustubha, it reminds me of the time you came to Super Soul. So Kaustubha came to do you've been here many times, but he came to do a part of the teacher training. And it was like, it's one of those crazy times where I was like trying to manage the kids and the animals are going crazy. And then I have to manage the
Animals.
other guest teacher. And then the sheep are in the garden eating everything. And then I got to make sure the cooking's on time. I'm just running around. And Kaustubha's looking at me and goes, how do you live like this? I was like, this is every day. This is every day. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. But imagine that, right? But imagine that, someone pulls the plug, suddenly it's silent, suddenly you feel a deep sense of relief, and actually you can begin to, in a sense, experience your own self again, right? Like what I want to think about, I'll think about now. Well, Patanjali's saying for lifetime after lifetime, our minds have been dominated by a constantly shifting, array of patterns of thought, and we're being carried by it. And it's shifting so rapidly from one to the next, we never escape it. And therefore, our true nature, which is blissful underneath, we've lost touch with. He's going to say, I'm going to give you a mechanical method. It's a really hard thing to do. It's real and it works. He's saying we're going to have to start with your lifestyle. So there's yama and niyama, right? You need to live an ethical life. You need to live a more pure lifestyle if you're going to stop the fluctuations. And then there's asana. That
is the
right?
preliminary. That's like buying the ticket before you get on the boat.
Yeah.
You got to get off of drugs. You got to get off of drinking. You got to get off like foul food. And that is like sort of like that's not the end, right? People think, well, now I don't drink and I don't smoke and I got my no big deal. You could be a total jerk. You could be a criminal. You could be a bank robber. That is the threshold to start having a chill mind. Otherwise, your mind is going to always be disturbed, and your senses are going to be pulling you around. And then you got to enter into the other stages.
And therefore, to say that I'm a yogi, but I haven't actually adjusted my lifestyle, it's kind of like you're saying, like, I'm trying to. It's kind of like, well, sometimes examples use like you're trying to light a fire, but you're pouring water on the wood at the same time. It doesn't matter how many times you strike the match; it's never going to take off, right? It's never going to light up. And so if your goal of a yogi is to settle the mind, particularly an Ashtanga yogi in this case, but at the same time you're stirring up the mind with your behavior, well then you're working against yourself, simultaneously as you're trying to practice yoga. It's not going to work. So it begins with lifestyle. And then it goes on to asana, which is to get all of the different channels in the body flowing smoothly, which helps for a more lucid and peaceful mind, right?
Where does it say? Where does it say acro yoga in the Yoga Sutras? Where does that come
It
in?
doesn't mention acro yoga.
You
Barely
should take
mentions
a partner while you're laying on your back with your feet in the air. Take a partner and have them do lotus sitting on your feet. Then spin them and do an upside down back bend. Then
all
toss
that
them.
came later. All of that came.
What
later.
about fire twirling? Where does that come in the Yoga Sutras? Because it seems to be a big part of the yoga community lately. Fire twirling. Don't take it personally if you're a fire twirler, but I see them a lot at yoga festivals. These fire twirlers.
Okay.
Is this what you mean by a daily yoga podcast? We talk about twirling and launching people with their feet.
Yeah. So in any case, Patanjali is going to give like a longer mechanical way of gaining control of the fluctuations of the mind. Here, Kapil Dev's saying he's just laying out the same exact fluctuations of the mind, right? And he's going to present different practices to Devahuti, including practices that are more yogic. Like when I say yogic, I mean like Ashtanga yogic, right? Or Jnana yogic. But ultimately, he's going to present to her Bhakti yoga as not only the simplest and most joyful path, but also as the path where all the other paths culminate, where they all finally meet, which is in divine love. Yeah,
it culminates in divine love. All
Did you
right,
get
here's
any
some
takeaways
takeaways,
today?
my friend.
Yeah. All right,
Because
what
it's
you got?
time. Teasing and flirting originates in the spiritual world.
There you go.
Here you go. Here's one. The jalopy going the wrong way is better than the jalopy going the right way is better than the Ferrari going the wrong way.
Yeah.
Insert Maserati. Here's a great one. Go for a day without fantasizing.
Okay, give it a try.
Give it a try. I caught myself doing it like while you were talking. I was like, and then this great thing is going to happen. It's all just like romance.
And I'm right in the center
mind.
of it. And it's all about me. Yeah.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, it's all is unreal because you could also be fantasizing about tragedy and disaster and how your life is so bad. And that could be your practiced fantasy. At least practice a fantasy that's going to take you to the next level in your spiritual life. Okay. How about restrain the senses and fix your focus on divinity?
Mm-hmm.
Krishna's at the top of the ladder. Boom. I like that one.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to LA, don't hang out in Scranton. And if you're going to Berlin, get the hell out of Stuttgart.
Okay.
And stirring up the mind. Don't stir up the mind with your bad behavior.
Okay.
You said that.
Now, announcements. You got Sweet Baby Krishna tonight at 7:30.
Sweet Baby Krishna at 7:30 New York time, Eastern Standard Time. Or
Okay.
Eastern.
And also, Kali Columbia. You want to mention something about that quick?
Kali Columbia is happening, but you really got to get your deposits in. It doesn't work if you say, yeah, I'm going. You got to actually get a deposit. That way we take
Because
your...
they're filling up.
Because it fills up and it gets... And people got caught with their pants down because what happened was they didn't sign up for Italy, or they said, yeah, I'm thinking about going, but they didn't leave a deposit. And then that thing just filled. So if you're thinking about Italy, there's a waiting list now. And you got to just get on that. Bhakti Retreats 108? Because I don't know. We'll figure that out. Bhakti Retreats 108 for Kali Columbia. I know that. And that is happening in January 13th. 2 weeks. Price is reasonable. And we're looking forward. Mara's going to be there. Kaustubha's going to be there. And I'm showing up. And we're all looking forward to it. We hope you're there. Bhakti Retreats 108. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. And here's the music, people. We had 108 people.